All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Comedy Sports DNI Talks. Here's the thing, Yvette. I'm still not even sure if that's what we're calling it. I know that's what Jason plastered on the front. We'll call it DNI Talks. I was like, okay. I think on one I said, welcome to DNI Chats. I was like, I'm not sure what this is called just yet. But welcome back. I am Luis Cortez, that I am sure of. I am a performer at Comedy Sports Chicago, and also I am our Director of Diversity and Inclusion. If this is one of your first time joining us, this is, again, I was just telling Yvette about this. I'm not sure if this is a show yet. I'm not sure if we're archiving this yet. We'll figure it out as we roll along. But essentially, I am collecting the stories of our ensemble, people past and present who have played for Comedy Sports Chicago, in order to have our voices heard and in order to have these stories archived so that we are aware of them, so that we can look back on them, so that we stop repeating those mistakes of the past, and honestly, just so that we can start making these conversations a little bit more regular around our theater space. Today, I am joined by one of our ensemble members that I am talking about. I have been playing with her for about as long as I've been here in Chicago, which is about 5 years now. She is one of my favorite people to play with. Please welcome Yvette Jaskiewicz.
Hi, Luis. Oh my gosh, you're one of my favorite people to play with. That's so sweet.
You know what I was thinking about today, Yvette? What is
What?
your maiden name?
Rebik.
Rebik?
Rebik. Yep.
Rebik. Okay.
Yeah.
It hit me today because I was like, oh, I got to remember to give her a nice intro. And then I went, I don't know what her name was before she married that beach bum.
Yes. Yes, Sean.
Yeah.
But yeah, we got married 5 years ago this November, last month. So if we've
Okay.
been playing together about 5 years, that's probably why you only know me
What
by
what what
Jaskowitz.
year did you get married? Was it 2015?
2015, November 14th, 2015.
Okay, so you got married, and then like 6 months later, I landed on the Chicago shores.
There you go.
So you were brand new married when you and
Yes.
I met.
Yes.
Okay, so um, can you give the good people of the internet just a little introduction about yourself, a little about your history as a performer, specifically improvising, and
Mhm.
then obviously a little bit about your time at Comedy Sports?
Yes. So I have been improvising for 15 years. I got my start in Denver. I was going to college in Boulder, and I was in between my junior and senior year. And I started taking improv classes in Denver in the city. And then I just absolutely fell in love with it. I just, kind of came across improv randomly where I was a journalism major. I was always like making my friends laugh. And then I did some Googling and I was like, oh, Tina Fey's so funny. I was like, oh, she took improv classes. Like, that's a thing. And it sounds so stupid me saying this now because I've spent thousands of dollars on improv classes. Like, yes, you have to take classes. Um, so yeah, so I fell in love with it, and then I moved. I'm from Illinois. I moved back home, moved to Chicago in the summer of 2011, and then I got in with IO and the conservatory, and then I made my first comedy sports house team. And back then it was called Genesis League. My
Okay.
first team was with Rudy Voigt and Chip O'Quan and Julie Marciano and Shay Ashbrook, like so many people that I like now know and stuff, and some of my closest friends. Chip was an usher in my wedding. He walked my mother-in-law down the aisle, which is very sweet.
Classic Chip.
Classic Chip. And then the next year, I was on Battle Prov, which was kind of what the new minor league is,
Right.
where it was, it was like the next step to ensemble. So when I made it, it was like a really big deal, and I was so excited. And then the following year, I got hired. So I got hired in 2013, class of
Okay.
2013. There are so many of us still left, which is amazing, very cool. And then in 2019, I guess, yeah, 2019, Jason Geis, the AD, hired me as the head coach. I had been coaching house teams, teaching in our school for years. And then Jason approached me because an opening happened. And so I now manage our minor league and I coach them as well as our rec league, which is now virtual rec league.
Right.
So yeah, so I just got back from maternity leave. I have a baby boy. His name is Bo Parker. He was born on August 13th. And now I'm back from maternity leave and really excited to just dive back into comedy sports and just kind of tackle this with a new set of eyes as a parent.
Oh, yeah, that's definitely something I wanna come back to.
Yeah.
But Today, our topic at hand, we're going to be talking just about the topic of disabilities within the improv world.
Yeah.
And you had spoken to me about this a little bit in the past, and so I thought that this might be a good time to just kind of put a spotlight on it, since one of the things that we talked about was that there's really not a lot of attention or information in regards to this community within the improv world. And so I figured we have a nice conversation about it and see what you think.
Yeah.
Because you've been playing, so 2014, so now you've been officially a comedy sports player for 6 years.
2013.
2013. Okay,
Yes.
so official comedy sports player for 7 years, and then
Yes.
Genesis League before that.
Yes.
And tell me about your experiences.
So I have epilepsy and I experience two different types of seizures. So my epilepsy is called generalized genetic epilepsy or genetic generalized epilepsy. You could really say it either way. So I experience like very small minor seizures, or I have what a lot of people know seizures are grand mal, where you fall to the ground and you twitch and that kind of thing. So I got diagnosed with epilepsy in November of 2017, but I had been undiagnosed for pretty much my whole life. So I have a really interesting scenario where when I was a kid, I like would feel weird and fall down. And each time I like got a concussion and had to go to the hospital. But I was with friends and I didn't know that I had a seizure. They didn't know, but the sensation that I felt was definitely, it's an aura. I was feeling that before I had that. So that happened a few times when I was a kid. And then twice when I was in college, I had grand mal seizures and I went to the hospital, got all these tests done. They couldn't find anything wrong with me. I got all the EEGs and everything, and I just couldn't find anything. They're like, oh, it's probably hormonal. I was like, oh, great, woman hormones, kind of thing. So then here's the thing with my small seizures, I thought, because it's like this sensation where my eyes kind of jitter and I
Mm-hmm.
feel like I need to hold on to something, like I'm going to fall down. But I was thinking like, oh, I'm dehydrated. Oh, I'm hungover. Maybe I didn't eat enough, like that kind of stuff. And in reality, I was having seizures and didn't know. And then in the Thanksgiving weekend of 2017, I went
Were you
grocery. Oh,
were
sorry.
you hung over that often that was a
I mean, kind of, yeah. I really like to, enjoy some libations. I later found out that alcohol is terrible it's the number one trigger, if not number two, for my type of epilepsy: alcohol and lack of sleep. So
Oh, those are the two things that we love.
new parent and
And new
oh
parent.
God. I know. So I was grocery shopping by myself and I felt like, and my husband has been with me, Sean, when like I've had these mini auras before, but I didn't know I was having a seizure. He would be like, are you okay? And I couldn't really communicate. I would just like hold on to something and just try to focus and not pass out. So I was grocery shopping at Trader Joe's. I feel like I'm feeling really dizzy. I grab an apple to start eating it. And then the next thing I know, I woke up in an ambulance and I had a seizure at the store. I guess this woman was with me the whole time. I had no idea. When I was at the hospital, they were like, oh, your friend helped you. And I was like, what friend? Like, I didn't have a friend there. So that was so nice. Fast forward, long story short, Trader Joe's comped all my groceries, gave me twice enough food, bought me flowers, like did this really nice thing as a gesture. Since I had emergency at the store, Sean had to rush to the hospital because he wasn't with me. And then I went to Northwestern and I was recommended a fantastic neurologist who works at the Women's Focus Center of Neurology at Northwestern. And her name is Dr. Elizabeth Gerard, really well known. And she diagnosed me properly. And since then, I have been on medication. And I'm proud to say that I have not had a seizure since then. And I've been
Wow.
on medication now for 3 years. And I just had a follow-up appointment a week ago today, a little video appointment, and everything is going great. And so epilepsy also played a big part in my pregnancy as well. So if we want to touch on that, we can. But long story short, I have epilepsy. I was diagnosed later in life as an adult, but I was definitely experiencing it throughout my life. And there were just certain moments where I can definitely like that was a seizure, but I had no idea at the
Oh
time.
boy. Okay.
Yeah.
So now what, well, from the point of getting diagnosed,
Yes.
what what did what changed, I guess, not, let's see, how do I want to phrase this? How has your life changed since that diagnosis?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I couldn't drive for a long time. I had to go, I think it was at least 6 months is the law in the state of Illinois, that you have to be seizure free before you can drive again. So I went I think I went almost a year, if I can remember correctly. I'm not sure, but I'm able to drive. I currently drive because I'm on great medication. I started wearing a medical alert bracelet when I go out. So it has my name and ID number and my condition. So it just says epilepsy. So if I were to have a seizure in public, an EMT would find it. They would know exactly my medicine, emergency contact, all that good stuff. Uh, in regards to impacting my life, besides that and the medical alert bracelet, I perform all the time. So I had to have a conversation with the then AD, Pat Connolly, and I asked him, I was like, how do I share this with the ensemble? Because everyone needs to know that this is something that I have now, and we need to adjust the way the show happens when I perform. There are some technical things now that, for example, flashing lights. My whole life, strobe lights drove me crazy, made me feel really weird because I have epilepsy.
Yeah.
No idea. So anyway, so he's
You
like,
mean
just
the thing that triggers epilepsy triggered your
I
epilepsy?
I know. It's so weird. I just thought I felt dizzy. So anyway, so he's like, Yvette, you can share however you want. If you want to share it at a rehearsal, if you want to send an email. And I'm just the type of person where I was like, I'll just share at rehearsal. Like, this is something that I am not embarrassed by. I wear it with great pride. I don't know the right way to say that, but like, I will talk about this with anybody, like my experience, because I'm fortunate enough though that I have a type of epilepsy, my diagnosis, where I can still like live a fairly easy life. There are some types that are very inhibiting and very difficult, where some people will have support animals or they are on really heavy medication. So mine, I guess, is more manageable than others. So I feel very fortunate because I can continue to perform because there's just some minor things that need to accommodate me versus someone who has, like dozens of seizures a day. There's just lots of different types of seizures. So I shared with the ensemble that I have epilepsy, answered a few questions, and then I told people, if you know anyone in the community that has epilepsy, I would love to talk to them because I don't know anybody. And 2 people reached out to me, and I connected with 2 people in the Chicago community. One guy now lives in LA, and the other guy I lost touch with, but it was very brief, like Facebook messages, like nothing like, hey, we're going to hang out. It was more of like, hey, what do you do? I don't know anyone else that has epilepsy, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the ensemble was really accommodating. And then I just basically had to have conversations with the stage managers to adjust the lighting. So that was my biggest thing with the shows, was that when our show opens, when we were in the theater, we had flashing white lights and flashing red and blue lights. The red and blue lights never bothered me. It was the white lights.
Yeah.
And they kind of go like this, or sometimes they go like this. And, it's just this like
It's
wild
a
pattern.
random strobe. Yeah.
Yes, but it's a strobe effect. So I would have to remind the stage managers, like, hey, just a reminder. And probably 90% of the time, they didn't
We're
do it.
good. Yeah.
But of course, there were a few times that didn't happen. When that did occur, I would, because you come out and you high five, and then you got to say your name and then everything. And so I hated it when I was on the red team because I had to be on stage longer with those lights versus if I was like the ref
Yeah.
or the blue team. But basically what would happen is I would just like have this, but I would like look down and dance. And I hate people who look down and dance because it's like, what's on the floor? Like, go out and dance and have your face out, like be proud. But that's just me. But anyway, so I would like look down and try to just like focus and not have the lights get to me too badly. Like when I'm in a movie theater and there's strobe lights, I'll like do this and cover like my eyes best I can. And then when we would then go out in the crowd for 10, I would run up to the stage manager and I would say, hey, can you please stop the flashing white lights? And then that way they would do it for the rest of the match. And every time it happened, whoever was in the booth, they're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I never took it personally because it was genuine mistakes. This was something new for me. But even like 2 years later, if it happened, it's okay. I'm fortunate enough where I have the opportunity to run up and tell them, in that type of situation. So the theater was always really accommodating. And then if I ever had to do a remote with like a big stage and there were lights, whoever was the stage manager with us would have that conversation with the venue to find out if there's anything we can accommodate with strobe effects. And I don't know if they tried to do that ahead of time or if it was on site, but I always know that it was like addressed. We do consent checks before matches. And I do not remember if I had to share that. I felt like I just only told that information to the stage manager, except maybe in the very beginning when like no one really knew, and told people like, hey, I have epilepsy. Like, please don't call a game that would involve a lot of flashing lights. Not that we have a lot of those games, but you never know. So
Yeah. No, I mean that's an excellent point. Just in regards to the consent checks, we always, or at least we think about them in regards to like, oh, please don't lift me up, or I don't like it when I can't lift my arm right now or anything like that. But
yeah, yeah.
something like that is definitely another great reason as to why we should continue these consent checks,
Yes.
because uh, it, I was not aware of the like how well when we play how easy it is for something like that to trigger you,
Yes.
and
And
then
like, yeah.
not knowing like what do we do,
Yes.
because we're uninformed.
Yeah, absolutely. And, our theater has that sign on the door, that says we use flashing lights, so it warns the audience. So if any audience members have epilepsy, they know what to expect. And, any parent who has a child with epilepsy, I would imagine that they would call the theater ahead of time anyway and say like, hey, what are the effects of your flashing lights? Is there anything we could accommodate, maybe depending on the severity of their epilepsy? But like, I know now, anytime I go see a movie or anytime I go see a live theater production, there is a very high chance that there's going to be some type of strobe effect. So I just have to be prepared for it and like cover my eyes. And I have some friends who go see movies and then they'll text me and
Oh,
they'll say,
awesome.
hey, don't see this. Or like, hey, at this point, like if you're going to see this movie, just know that, this will happen. And so, yeah.
Cool. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it is very, very nice. I mean, when I got diagnosed, it was really scary. And, my friends and family just really, went well out of their way to make me feel comfortable and good. And,
I wonder if that's like a website. Like, because I know there are websites that are like, you can go see if, like, hey, does this movie have nudity? At which point is there nudity?
okay, I have an app idea. I have an app idea that I've been
Oh,
wanting to do. And it's like epileptics go to the movies and someone goes and they tell you the time of when strobe light effects happen. So you press start at the beginning of the movie and your phone will like buzz when it's like a 30-second warning or a 1 minute warning, or you can time it however you want. So
oh,
then when to like turn your head away. That's like, I
that's
have that idea. And then there's also an option for like when to pee. And you can have that as well. You can embed that as well. We're like, this
well,
is
that's
downtime.
already like, I know that's already a thing. Like, there are websites you can go
Okay.
to where they'll tell you like, here are the great places to
Yeah.
pee, and there's also one that's like, if you're someone who doesn't like seeing like a dog killed in a movie, you go to this website to be like, don't watch this movie because this is how many dogs die in it.
Oh my God. But
That's
no,
a very that's a
yeah.
very specific thing to be watching movies specifically for. Like, does a dog die in this?
Oh my God. Oh my God. But yeah, I have that idea for an app. I don't know if it exists, but I feel like that would be very beneficial, but it would take
Well,
a long
the
time to build.
first thing to do will be to stream your idea across the internet without any sort of security to
Great.
the
Hey,
to
here,
or ownership to the idea.
let this one hold up in court. This me saying this like,
Hey, you can't steal that.
oh,
Contract signed, verbal agreement. Take that, internet.
oh my God, I
So
love that.
when when you received your diagnosis,
Mhm.
was there a point where you started identifying as a person with a disability? Like, was that a switch in your head?
It only became a switch in my head when I looked at one of those equal opportunity employment surveys,
Hmm.
where, it's like, this is like your race, your ethnicity, veteran status. Then I saw disability, and then I saw epilepsy was on the list, and I was like, oh, I have a disability. Up to that point, I did not know that epilepsy was a disability. And that is like my own honest truth. I had no idea. So that's me being totally naive and clueless.
No, no,
Yeah.
totally. And
But once I found out, then I was like, wow, okay. This is something that like I feel like is even more important for me to learn more about. And if I could be a source of information for people, because I think it's really important because there's so many different types of disabilities or differently abled, whatever people are comfortable with saying. For me, I'm comfortable with saying disability, and that there's so many that you may not even know that someone has a disability. And I think it's just the list is so long that I think is great because there are so many things that can affect your general well-being. And I think that's just what it is. It's like I can't live my life without taking medicine every single day. If I don't take my medicine, I'm at risk for having a seizure, which equals risk for brain damage,
right.
because it's neurological. So that's like my risk. That's my disability. Because if I stop taking medicine, something bad's going to happen.
So, was it the fact that the specific disability that you have is, unless it's physically happening on the outside, people don't know. So it's a disability you technically can't see unless it's happening.
Correct.
Was that that concept? Was that the concept that essentially kept you from considering yourself someone with a disability?
Yeah, because I didn't think it was an obvious one, right? Where someone would, like you just said, would look at me and they wouldn't know. So that, yeah, that's why I didn't really think of it as a disability. And also too, because the diagnosis was so new. I think once you find out, then you're like, I have a disability. I'm taking ownership of this. Like if I would have known as a kid, then I'd be like, oh yeah, of course this is a disability. But now as an adult, I'm like, oh wow, this is one. Cool. Okay. And then once I found out I had it, then I realized, wow, there are not a lot of people in the improv community who have epilepsy, or I can't find them. So there's one category. And then also, like, is there like a disability like group or community or like in the improv community? And I could never find one. I always had a really hard time. And then one of my friends, she started at I believe, this like disability show that had performers who identified as disabled would do shows there, and I never put my name in the hat for that. I think just with timing and everything, but she always like that was the first thing that I saw that was like, we will perform and you can do stand up or improv or music, and it's highlighting because she has a disability, so highlighting that. And I can't remember the name of the show, but yeah, I know Simon did a show with them once. Simon, who's on our ensemble.
Right.
So yeah, if anything, that was really awesome. And then for our theater, just not really knowing, people who identify as disabled. I know that for me as the head coach for all the house teams, that when we were in spaces, I was responsible for finding rehearsal spaces. And for me, my biggest thing was finding ones that were ADA compliant, because there's so many rehearsal spaces where there's stairs. And if there's stairs, a team member who cannot use stairs is automatically unable to be on a team. And I refused to have that happen. So that was like a really big initiative for me, was to make sure that we had a space with an elevator available, or a room where like there wasn't a stair to go in the door and our
Right.
rehearsal space was on the first floor. So yeah, I was
And
glad I was able to secure that.
the funny thing is, one of the things that I recently heard, that probably like within 24 hours, is the idea that the building might be ADA compliant, but the stage is not.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's tricky. So, like for our theater, you can walk in, go up the elevator, and then if you go into the theater, there's like wider tables where you can, like, if you have a wheelchair, you're on crutches, there's, like larger
Yeah, there's
tables. And
room.
then if you're a performer, you go into the theater like the same way you would to go see the show. And then you go through like our side exit, and then there's a ramp, and then you can go to get into the stage. But that area is so tiny. It is so small that if you're like, let's say you are in a wheelchair and you're going up the ramp and then there's like curtains and like, then of course we have the middle doors, but you have to use your arms to get through the double door. Like
Yeah.
it's very complicated. So even though we can have people who are in wheelchairs or crutches or canes, whatever they need to use in order to move, we can do that at the theater. It's a little difficult.
Oh, definitely. It falls under one of those situations where like it technically
Yeah.
does the thing,
Hmm.
but it's not.
It's not great.
It's not
It's
great.
not
Yeah,
great.
it's not great.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's one of those situations where it's just like, oh, the ramp is on the other side of the building type of thing.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. So I could totally see that, and so since you uh announced it to the ensemble, I mean, I'm assuming everyone was accommodating as possible. Um,
Yes.
I don't want to say I'm assuming. I'm hoping.
Yes.
Uh,
Yeah. Everyone was great.
how has that affected your the way that you play, or has it affected the way that you play at all?
Let's see, I can get in my head sometimes if someone makes a joke about seizures
Mm-hmm.
or about epilepsy, where before it never really got to me. I was like, oh, I've had a seizure before. But like if someone said epilepsy on stage, whether I was watching the show or performing in the show, so if I was the one in the scene or I was watching, it for some reason now I get annoyed.
It triggers you.
It triggers me, and before it didn't. And it's like
It's
it
because you
should
didn't
have.
know before.
Yeah, but like I still had seizures, But and then when I see it in a movie, it like annoys me. I'm like, that is such a cheap joke,
when
Like
it's
what?
when it's presented as the butt of the joke.
Yes. Yes. When it is presented as the butt of the joke. So in my mind, when I'm watching, or like in Five Things, like that kind of stuff where I'm just like, like you don't have to like go in that direction. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? That kind of stuff. Um, so like, for example, if you're trying to show strobe lights, you don't need to like have a seizure to show that it's a strobe light. You know what I mean? Like if it's like a clue giving kind of situation. But it's really just for me, beyond that, like I feel totally great doing shows. It's just lights. So as soon as something happens with the lights, that's what makes me nervous. And then virtually, I know that we're really not doing consent checks as much anymore. So I'm glad this is something that we want to bring back. If there's any game that involves a lot of computer movement, so there's Sorkin, I think is a game.
Yeah.
I
Sorkin
can't,
is not
I
just a
can't watch
game;
it.
it's a way of life.
Yes, and I can't watch it because it just totally messes with my eyes.
Yeah.
So that means I cannot play that game. So it's a hard no for me. And
Mm-hmm.
if a team's going to play it, I cannot ref that game. I cannot ref that match. So it's just something that I have to let people know that that's an exception for me as a ref is I cannot ref this game virtually. You have to select a different game. So just something to be mindful of. But I think overall, I feel like my talent level hasn't changed. I don't feel like I can make the same choices. It's just all stuff that's like around me that is now has to change, not necessarily me physically.
Right. So, we're moving hopefully into whatever the next chapter of our theater is going to be once we're
Yeah.
able to get back in there. Um, what sort of changes, I guess, would you like to start seeing? Not even necessarily within improv community as a whole, but obviously we
Mhm.
want the whole community to change. But just within comedy sports,
Yeah.
would you say that do we need more education on the topic? Do we need obviously one of the things that we talked about earlier was um, the ability to be able to connect with the people within that community. How
Yeah.
do we reach out to those people?
For
Um,
sure. Yeah, I think there's a few different answers to this. So first, whatever space we're in. So whether it's we're returning to our space, if we have to find a new space after everything, no matter where we are physically, I think it would be great to have our lights be accommodating for everybody. So it's sensory friendly for everybody. So no matter what you identify as, who you identify as, what disability you may have, if you have one or not, you can watch our show, and that is never a concern. That we can figure out ways to fade lights and have them come in and out for like the like simulation that it's strobe, but it's not. That kind of thing where
Hmm.
let's just program it so we never have to worry about it. So I never have to say a thing again, or someone else doesn't have to say something, or a parent doesn't have to call to verify. It's a safe space for all those lights. In regards to, I would love better wheelchair access for performers, or if they have crutches, like definitely that's something where they should be feel very comfortable being on our stage, getting on and off. For a community standpoint, I would love it if whenever we bring new people on into our house teams, when they're filling out the audition form, much like applying for a job, you can voluntarily give information about your status. So for me, I would really like to know, like, if you identify as someone in this community, and of course it's optional, it's voluntary.
Right.
And if you decide to volunteer that information, then I can connect with you as the head coach and ask, like, hey, I noticed that you did this. I have a disability. Would you want to like discuss your needs at the theater? Would you want to, that kind of thing? So at least I know that there is someone that I can talk to and make sure that whatever they need, their accommodations are met. And then also too, I think it would be great to have a subgroup at the theater of almost like, we've kind of talked about this, like a meet and greet type of thing, where if you identify in this group, like Yvette's hosting this like meet and greet hangout, and if it's not just me, there's other people on the professional ensemble who have disabilities. So like if they want to host it one night and we're all just like hanging out and mingling, and we're not going to sit there and talk about our disabilities. Like that's not,
Right.
we
It's
don't do that. We're not like comparing ourselves, but at least it's nice to know that there are other people in the building that can relate to you, that you do not live a normal life on a daily basis, that there is something that is contributing to you not being able to live a normal life. And I put
right.
that in quotes because everyone's life is different. But
Right. You're
scientifically, you know what I mean? Like it's,
the way our world and society is designed, you are not able to access all that stuff as easily as the rest of
yes,
us.
yes,
So
absolutely.
there are certain things that have to be
Hmm.
met every single day in order for you to be able to just function at the neutral level.
Yeah, for sure. And here's the thing too, that, there's a lot of legalities with asking people, to
Of
volunteer their
course.
information. So for me as the head coach, like I want to do this properly. I just want to find a way for us in our building and the improv community in whole, where like, how can we find each other? Like I want to know how we can find each other and do it in the proper way, where it's not illegal, it's not weird or awkward, and I don't have that answer. So
And you
like,
know what? It, it
yeah.
it's a valid question. How do we just as a building of trust within our community so that people
Mhm.
feel comfortable enough to share that sort of information without us having to like literally like, hey, in your application, it was like
Yeah.
as history has taught us, lists of things like that is never a good thing.
Yeah. So like
uh
even having that in the volunteer survey when you want to join a house team, that's probably not a great idea, but it's
yeah.
just something to throw out, be like, no, let's not do that. Let's find a different way.
Right. The concept itself is not great because of what people usually end up doing with things like that, but
Yeah.
also what people I think don't always consider. And both of us being on the that administrative side of the
Yeah.
theater, it's like, well, we have a lot of like legality and certain things that we have to adhere to. So it's not a no. This has to be a deeper conversation than just, well, just do this. I was like, well,
Yes.
sure. Well, I'm at it. Why don't I just make a wish too? Like we have to
Yeah.
there's a proper way for all this stuff, and we
Yeah.
want to find it because I want this as bad as you and I'm as angry as you, and
Hmm.
don't take my I can't do that as not like as me not caring.
Yeah,
Take it
for
as
sure.
like, okay, let me find a way to do that. But yeah, Yvette, this was awesome. We're coming up on our time here.
Okay.
But really, this is fantastic, and as I said, this is a jumping off point, and hopefully we can make some efforts to make people comfortable enough so that we can connect everyone and communicate, and hopefully maybe we can do a nice roundtable with everyone.
Yeah.
Um, but any final thoughts that you might want to send out to our viewers, to the community, to the people watching the archives?
Yeah, I just want to thank you so much for bringing attention to this. Like I've said to you, Luis, I think a lot of times in the DNI community that people don't think of differently abled or disabled as that as part of the DNI community. And so, so I really like that you wanted to talk to me and that we can bring more of these conversations into our theater so that way we're remembered that we are part of this group, that we are a part of DNI, and what can we do as a building to recognize that we do have players with disabilities and how we would like to work with them, highlight them, etc. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, we're gonna keep working on this, and it's a mountain.
Oh,
We're trying
yeah.
to climb a mountain, but I'm trying to not look all the way to the top. I'm trying to just take it in
Yeah.
chunks. If you look at
Good.
the whole thing, it's just gonna slow you down. Take it
So
bit by
overwhelming.
bit. But yes, this is like hopefully, as I will have with many people, a great first conversation, which will hopefully be followed by many, many more. Yvette, thank you so
Yes.
much. We'll definitely
Thank
have you
you.
back. And thank you all so much for watching. And we will see you next time here at whatever I decide to call this show.